The fall route, station free. Lend your hands to the families of Strigoyeshti and bring in their harvest. But know this, once you have taken your place among their kin, you will remain so even after death. My name is Leo, and I'm probably crazy. At least I've started to feel that way during the last weeks of my road trip with Riley. If you've heard about Transylvania, you know that it has the reputation to be one of the creepiest places in Europe, probably because of Count Dracula. That's why Riley and I were heading there. After covering the first 2 stops of the notorious fall route, this was the next place on the map. We planned to show our followers that the fall route was nothing but some weird creepypasta, except that we had barely made it out of the last 2 stops. But our following online had exploded since we uploaded the videos from Valombra and Blutkogel, so I didn't have any arguments when Riley pushed that we continue. We still had a silver SUV from the abandoned parking lot in Blutkogel, as we made the 13-hour trip to the west of Romania, a small village called Strigoyeshti. When the GPS showed that we had arrived at our destination, I got out of the car looking around. I was at a loss. There were barely more than a handful of wooden houses scattered along the single dirt road that led toward the forested mountains in the distance. "What's wrong, Leo?" Riley slid out of the car and came up next to me. I shook my head. "That's it, Strigoyeshti. Not sure anyone is home." We parked the car by the side of the road and wandered along it. The first house was a small shop, windows filled to the top with product boxes that had been bleached by the sun. The door didn't open. They were probably taking a lunch break. A black cat ran towards us. When we continued into Strigoyeshti, it brushed against my legs and started purring. Riley giggled, picked it up, and carried it around. In front of a beautiful big house, with carved details and a balcony filled with flowers, we encountered the next inhabitant of the village, a huge pig that was munching on some rotting apples. "Where is everyone?" Riley asked. I shrugged. This place looked like time had stopped here 100 years ago. We continued walking and arrived at a wooden farmhouse with a big orchard. A group of men were busy carrying tables and chairs out of the house. They didn't notice us until we stood before them and greeted them. I was worried that they would feel upset because we had just stepped into their garden. But a man with gray hair, tanned skin, and a lot of muscle for his age came towards us and shook our hands. "Welcome, friends. My name is Petru. What brings you to our village?" We introduced ourselves and said that we had come to film their harvest celebration. It felt odd, talking about our work on social media when I was sure that this man had never been on any of those platforms. Made me feel like we were entering their peaceful village to film something about a scary story that neither Petru nor the other villagers had ever heard about. But he just nodded and said, "The harvest is the most important day in Strigoyeshti, and since you are here, you must be our guests. But only family can stay here tonight. You must become family for the celebration. This means you come to the fields with us, you bring in the harvest, you eat with us, and you must drink." He turned to a younger man that looked like his son. "Ilya, bring the Schlibowitz for our new family members." Before we could say anything, we each were holding a shot glass with a brownish liquid. I tried to tell them that I don't drink, but they would not let me refuse. So in the end, Riley and I raised our glasses with our new friend Petru, his family and what seemed to be his neighbors. "To family," they said, and poured down the liquor. It burned like fire in my throat and left a warm sensation in my stomach. Petru patted us both on the shoulders and said, "Now you are part of my family. Come to the fields with us, and tonight we will feast at the harvest celebration." I took the camera gear out of my backpack, getting ready to film this whole day, while Riley took some footage of the pig that was now walking leisurely in the middle of the road, looking for food on the ground. I had never worked on a farm, so I had no idea what to expect when Petru told us to get on the wooden cart that was pulled by a sturdy horse. A group of around 30 men, women, and even children joined us. Everyone was in good spirits. This was probably the highlight of the season for all of them. As we left the houses behind, we passed a meadow where a group of women were setting up a space for the celebration. They had put together tables to make one long banquet table. I tried to count the chairs they were bringing, way more than 30. This table would probably seat closer to 100 people. So I turned to Petru, who was sitting in front of the cart holding the reins. There's 100 people living in Strigoyești? I couldn't imagine how all of them would fit into the few houses we had seen. He laughed. Wouldn't say they are living here, but our table will be filled with family tonight. He turned around and left me confused. Soon afterwards, the cart stopped next to a big pumpkin patch. There were all kinds of colorful pumpkin variations, yellow, orange, and green. After taking a few pictures of Riley posing in the field, we each took a sickle from Petru and followed the other guys. Petru lifted up one of the smaller pumpkins and cut off the stem with a sickle. It's simple, just cut them and put them to the sides of the field. At the end, we will collect them in the cart. I looked at the field, not exactly feeling excited about this task. We could also leave at this point, I muttered. Riley shook her head. We are in this now, Leo. We are not going home before we finish the fall route. Then we should at least ask Equinox Eternal for more money. After everything we've been through, I feel like we have undersold ourselves. You're right. We should send him a message after tonight, she said. That took me by surprise. I had expected her to say with her usual enthusiasm that I shouldn't be so grumpy and enjoy the trip. She started collecting pumpkins as if she was paid to do so, but left the bigger ones to me. I just stopped in between to film her and the other workers on the field. Around late afternoon, the sky darkened with clouds. I wondered if there would be a storm coming that would ruin the celebration tonight. Petru walked over to us. Let's pack up, Leo, Riley. It is time to go back and start the celebration. I pointed up at the sky that was rapidly getting darker, creating an eerie mood. Petru said, We will make fires to keep the darkness out. Do not fear it. I wanted to ask him why I should fear the darkness when I was actually worried it might start raining any second. But he had already gone ahead to load the pumpkins onto the cart. It started to drizzle when we followed the cart back to the village. The smell of roasted meat and smoke drifted towards us as we approached the meadow. Someone had lit big fires in a circle around the long table. On several of the fires, people were roasting pig halves on a spit and smaller pieces of meat. Riley grabbed my arm. She looked pale when I turned to her. Do you think that's the cute pig we saw earlier? I am sure they have more than one pig here. Likely it's not the exact one. I'm not gonna eat that anyway. I just took pictures of the piggy earlier and posted them on our channels, she said. I looked around. The workers that had been on the field with us gathered around the table. They weren't even filling it by half, but I noticed that nobody sat next to each other. They always left one chair empty in between. When Riley and I were sitting down, a woman with a worried expression stopped us. She frantically shook her head and repeated something I couldn't understand. Her daughter told us that it wasn't allowed to sit next to each other. We needed to leave space for family, whatever that meant. I took it as just another strange tradition I had never heard about. I just shrugged and put my camera bag on the chair between us. For a while, we just sat there and nothing happened. People were still busy bringing plates and dishes from their houses to the table. At the same time, it was getting dark at an alarming pace. A quick glance at my phone showed that it was only 4 in the afternoon. It should still be sunny. Instead, we got the worst of fall weather. Fog rose from the fields around us and it was continuing to drizzle. If it hadn't been for the many fires, we would have needed torches or lanterns to light the table. I was constantly looking over my shoulder to see if Petru was returning after he had brought the cart back to his farm. I suppressed the urge to jump up from my chair and go looking for him. I envied Riley because she seemed quite relaxed, except for her nervous glances in the direction of the spits. Riles, we're not spending the night here, right? After this meal is done, we go straight to the car and get out of here, I said. She nodded absent-mindedly. Finally, Petru and his 3 sons and wife entered the area of the celebration. We weren't the only ones waiting for them. People ran towards them, hugged them, and pulled them to the center of the long table. When everyone had found their places, Petru got up and held up a shot glass with a liquid that looked like the Schlibowitz we had gotten earlier. Tonight we celebrate family, my dears. Each family member is taking their rightful place in this most important meal of the year. In a few moments, we will enjoy the fruits of our work. of our lives. But before we start, a few words to the new family members who joined us today. We welcome you in our midst. You worked with us, now you eat with us. You belong to us from hands on. For tonight, to stay safe, there are 3 rules you need to observe. Do not speak to the distant family that will join us soon. Make sure their plates never go empty and do not leave until the last fire has burnt down. He lifted his glass. Some of the younger women who were bringing food to the tables had put shot glasses in front of us. Now we all drink to a fruitful harvest. Everybody raised their glasses, also Riley and I. Somehow, I didn't dare to not drink under Petru's observation. After we put our glasses down, everybody started loading their plates. There were big pots with steaming soup, sour vegetable soup, meatball soup. Petru's son urged me to take the smoked pork belly and sausages seasoned with paprika and garlic. While Riley was holding back a bit on the food, I have to admit, I loved it. It was delicious, fresh as only homemade food from a farm can be. But then I recognized the shapes of human bodies that emerged from the fog and walked, or I should say, stumbled towards the table. On the faces of the others there was no trace of fear. They continued to laugh, talk, and eat. Only Riles and I sat frozen in our chairs. I remember the rules Petru had mentioned earlier. Do not leave your place before the fires are burnt down. Riley and I exchanged the look. She was thinking the same thing. One of those shadows came straight towards us, pulled out the chair between us, and sat down. I lowered the camera, wondering if it would bother this creature, but then I saw Riley signaling me to continue. Through the lens, I looked at the face of the person that had sat down. Close up, I could see the features clearly. The skin of this, what must have been once a young girl, wearing a long dress with polka dots, was white like paper. Her hair was thin and looked like dark spider webs hanging from her head. When she turned towards me, I froze. Red eyes stared at me. That was enough filming for me. I could not pretend that this was normal. She kept looking at me even after I had lowered my camera, until Riley put some of the smoked meat and grilled vegetables onto the plate of this visitor. The girl then started eating and didn't mind us until her plate was empty. This time I piled roasted pig onto her plate. She cleared it again and again as if nothing could ever fill her up. I looked around and saw that the villagers were also busy feeding what must be what Petru called a distant family. I looked up at the sky, hoping for a sign that this would be over soon, but it was still unnaturally dark. Not even the moon was visible. And all this time, I couldn't even talk to Riley because there was this girl sitting between us. But on her face, I could see that she was scared. Since I didn't want to find out what would happen if we broke the 3rd rule and got up, we were trapped here. All I could do was drink more of that plum liquor that had meanwhile stopped burning my throat and almost tasted good. One glance to the side showed me that Riles had resigned to doing the same thing. We toasted silently, exchanging weak smiles, and their looks were the only thing that comforted me in this situation. I got dizzy and colors started melting into each other. I'm not used to drinking. It felt like the floor was moving back and forth. I could feel myself sway. Until, at one point, I just rested my head on the table, gazing out through my half-closed eyes. I gave up fighting and just drifted away. I was awoken by something warm against the side of my body. It smelled warm and vaguely familiar, like cherry perfume. It started pushing me. That's when I opened my eyes. The light hurt my eyes. I blinked. "Leo, get up, please." "Riles," I muttered. "What happened?" "They're all gone. Everyone, even the animals and their houses. You need to get up and look," she said. I fought against the heaviness weighing me down. When I struggled myself into an upright position and looked down, I was covered in stains from food. Apparently I had dropped onto my plate, making a mess. The table, the chairs, and the plates and leftovers were still there, but none of the villagers. Maybe they had gone to the houses and left us here to sober up. I staggered onto my feet and followed Riley to the village. On our way, we came across dozens of footsteps on the muddy ground that led from the fields to the area of the harvest mill, but there were no tracks that led back. The village wasn't only deserted, The houses that had seemed well kept yesterday were now ruins with collapsed roofs and overgrown gardens. It looked as if no soul had been here for at least 20 years, probably longer. "What does that mean, Riles?" I asked, without really expecting an answer. She just shot me a long look and then hugged me really tight. I got what she was feeling. I also did not want to talk about what had happened last night. It was too fresh, and it would open questions I was not sure I wanted the answer to. We quietly walked back to our car and started driving away from Strigoyeshti. Riley's phone buzzed. She picked it up and the tired expression on her face changed into excitement. "It's him! Equinox Eternal! He wrote us a direct message." I stopped at the side of the road and read it out loud. "My favorite explorers, I see you have gained 3 out of the 6 charms scattered along the fall route. Congratulations, you are still alive. The remaining 3 await you on your way ahead. Collect them, and we will meet and I will reward you in ways you cannot imagine. P.S. I am still waiting for my postcard. Equinox Eternal." Thank you for watching an episode of our Fall Route series. I'm your narrator, Afik, and this episode was written by my lovely partner, Effi, and together we are stories of solstice. If you enjoy this, please leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and see you in the next episode.